Hey, I'm Emily Muhlstein with the Gulf of Mexico Fishery Management Council, and welcome to our first episode of Gulf Currents, a video series that aims to explain some of the current issues that are being faced by the Gulf of Mexico Fishery Management Council. So today we have Dr. John Freschke, the Deputy Director of the Gulf of Mexico Fishery Management Council, joining us, and he is here to talk a little bit about greater amberjack. Greater amberjack has been overfished for a number of years, and we have been struggling to rebuild it. And as you'll learn from our discussion today, hopefully, there are actually some management changes on the horizon for this year, and John's going to explain to us what's going on with greater amberjack and what we can expect in the near future. Hi, John. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Emily. Pleasure to be here.
All right. So greater amberjack is kind of complex. Can you start us off with just a brief overview of the science and management of the species?
Sure, Emily. Thanks. I'll try. So as you indicated, it's been a very difficult species to manage. We've had stock assessments, 6 of them since 2000.
Well, that's a lot.
Yes. So the most recent one being completed in 2021, last year, that were the subject of this current action. So each of these assessments has indicated that amberjack is both overfished and experiencing overfishing. Based on the most recent assessment, substantial reductions in allowable harvest for both the recreational and commercial sectors are necessary to meet this rebuilding target, and is the subject of the rebuilding plan.
Okay, so if I heard that right, we are expecting some pretty substantial reductions in our harvest that's going to impact both recreational and commercial sectors.
That's right.
Okay, so how is that going to be managed then in the short term and in the long term?
Okay, so there's 2 parts to this. In the longer term, meaning the rebuilding plan from 2023 through 2027.
And that's through a normal plan amendment, through the council process that we always go through.
That's correct. When a stock assessment indicates that the stock is overfished and overfishing, NOAA will send the council a letter indicating that the stock is experiencing overfishing, and they have 2 years to implement regulations to end overfishing and begin rebuilding the stock. And so the council has received that letter in the spring of 2021.
So that was last spring, so we're a year in.
We're a year in,
okay,
which means that we have essentially a year to implement new regulations, which means the council needs to complete their work by the fall of 2022.
Okay, so what are the changes that we're looking at in that document that's going to be a little bit more long-term?
Okay, so the longer-term changes are we're going to expect substantial reductions in allowable harvest for both the commercial and recreational sectors through the end of the rebuilding plan.
Okay.
So that's one.
So the catch levels are going to drop for both sectors.
Down,
okay.
And that's going to be a big change for both sectors.
Okay. Okay. So what else besides those catch level changes?
So the other portion in the rebuilding plan is that this stock assessment was the first to make use of the MRIP, Marine Recreational Information Program's Fishing Effort Survey. And what the estimates suggest is that the historical participation of the recreational sector in both the effort and the landings is much higher than we thought. So this has a couple of implications. One, amberjack is one of the species that the council manages through sector allocations, meaning that the commercial and the recreational sectors have specified percentages of the total of the annual catch limit that they can harvest. In this case, it's 73% for the recreational sector, 27% for the commercial sector. But this was based on the previous recreational information and the commercial information.
So those new recreational estimates are maybe changing our perception of what that allocation maybe actually has been in the past, and maybe what it should be in the future.
That's correct.
Okay, so this amendment, what number is it?
It's Refish Amendment 54.
54. Okay, so Amendment 54 has catch limits, this allocation decision. Now, our management measure is going to be included. So are we going to be talking about season, size limits, bag limits, maybe commercial catch limits? Is that all going to be included in that amendment or no?
Not at this time. So as we indicated before, we're under very strict timing requirement to implement these reductions in catch limits.
So That brings me to another question, sort of knowing that we have this 2-year timeline to stop this overfishing situation. We're working on Amendment 54, but something's happening this season, and it's happening in like a matter of days or weeks. So can you talk to me a little bit about what's happening this season and why?
Yeah. A few years ago, the council modified the fishing year. So there are two parts. There's the fishing year and the fishing season. Most fish stocks, including the commercial sector for the greater Amberjack, the fishing year is the same as the calendar year, meaning it starts every January 1 and extends through December 31st.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but essentially the fishing year is when the annual catch limit renews.
That's correct.
Okay.
And so the fishing season will be some portion of the fishing year.
Okay, and for some species it's the whole season is the whole year. For some, like red snapper, the fishing year is January 1st, but the season's not until the summer.
That's correct.
Okay, so for Amberjack, the fishing year is not on January 1st for the recreational sector, right?
That's right. It starts August 1 and extends through July 31st.
Okay.
And so the concern is that if we don't take some action to reduce the season in the fall of 2022, the landings may exceed the 2023 fishing year. As an additional complication, there are payback provisions required, meaning that any overage has to be paid back in the 2023-2024 fishing year.
So presumably if we left everything the same this year, we could recreationally harvest more than we want to and then be subject to a payback, so that would reduce our season the following fall.
Yes, and it could reduce or even eliminate it if we don't take action.
In layman's terms, in order to avoid completely closing the season next year, we're going to shorten the season this year.
That's right.
Okay. And what's the vehicle for doing that? Like that, this is not really a council thing. This is kind of different, right?
Yeah, this is a different vehicle in that this action is unanticipated. We wouldn't have been able to predict this until we got the results of the stock assessment and began working through the rebuilding process.
Okay.
And so this vehicle is an emergency action, and this is through NOAA. They write this document and they can submit it on an abbreviated timeline.
So just to sort of summarize what I'm hearing, it sounds to me like we are working on some long-term management changes, but that's going to take a little bit, and there's going to be opportunity for you as the public to participate in making some of those management decisions or helping inform the council as they do it. So we are going to go out to public comment for that Amendment 54 sometime in the fall before we take final action. But in the immediate, I think the important thing that we need to sort of drive home is that we have requested, or NOAA is requesting with our advice, to some extent, that we shorten the recreational fishing season this year. And so that season, when does that plan to open up? Is it going to open up on our normal August 1 opening, or is it different?
No, this year the plan is that it will open up September 1 and run through the end of October.
Okay, September 1 through the end of October. So it'll be a 2-month fall season for the recreational sector this year, 2022.
That's right.
Okay, awesome. So you guys heard it here. John, I really want to thank you for taking the time. This is a really complicated topic, but I think it's really important for us to just understand that we continue to have trouble managing Amberjack and rebuilding it. This year, the recreational season is going to be shorter. It's going to run instead from September 1 through October 31st, and then we are going to be working on management changes through Amendment 54 this fall. So please stay tuned to the council process so that you can participate and send us your public comments as we develop that document. Again, John, thank you for your time.
My pleasure.
And thank you guys for listening in and getting a little bit of a explanation of what's going on with Amberjack.